Fair use disclaimer. The copyright laws of the United States recognizes a fair use of copyright content. Section 107 of the United States Copyright Act states, notwithstanding the provisions of sections 106 and 106A, the fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction, in copies or phone records or by any other means specified by that section for purposes such as criticism, comments, news, reporting, teaching, including multiple copies for classroom use, scholarships, or research, is not an infringement of copyright. This video and YouTube channel in general may contain copyrighted works that were not specifically authorized to be used by the copyright holders, but which we believe in good faith are protected by federal law and the fair use doctrine for one or more of the reasons noted above. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. In our celebrity gossip and news, after 27 long years, justice will finally be served for rapper Tupac Shakur, and the person responsible for his demise will be more than likely spending the rest of his last days behind bars. Dwayne Davis, aka Keefe D, has been arrested and charged for taking out Tupac. Since 2018, he's been doing interviews pretty much bragging about his involvement into what happened to Tupac, even wrote a book about it. Well, it's all caught up to him now. Guess he thought life was sweet since everyone involved all are deceased. Police raided his home and found mountains of evidence. One would think after all this time he would have gotten rid of all of that evidence, but not Mr. Arrogant and Cocky Keefe. He thought he was untouchable, allegedly. Take a listen to some of the highlighted skits here, what the arrested detectives and prosecutors had to say, and I'll come back.
Years after rapper Tupac Shakur was death in a car in Las Vegas, a man who confessed to his involvement in the crime is behind bars.
Who's Tupac?
To keep it for the code of the streets. It just came from the backseat, bro.
Filmmaker Mike Dorsey predicted an arrest on Law and Crime nearly 2 months ago.
I think that they are going to close this case. I think that there is very likely going to be an indictment.
Las Vegas Metro Police took Dwayne Keefe D. Davis into custody Friday. He's being held on charges related to the 1996 of rapper Tupac Shakur. Las Vegas Metro Police searched Davis's home in Henderson, Nevada in July.
The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We have a search warrant for the resident. You need to come out with your hands up, with your hands in.
At the same time, a grand jury was investigating Tupac Shakur was shot as he was riding in a car driven by Suge Knight one night in September 1996. Tupac had gotten into a fight with a man named Orlando Anderson at the MGM Grand during a Mike Tyson fight. The Shakur was believed to be retaliation for the fight. Keefe D later confessed that he gave Anderson, who was his nephew, Tupac Shakur. He made the statement in a proffer to police, but the statement could not be used against him in court. Years later, Keefe D admitted his involvement in Tupac's in his book, Compton Street Legend. Many view the book as a confession. Keefe D wrote about that night, "I pulled out the Glock that Zip had given me and tossed it in the back seat. Bubble Up did the driving, Baby Lane and Freaky were riding in the back. Like two rams locking horns, Suge and I looked each other dead in the eye. The terrified expression on Suge's face read, 'Damn them N-words.' He goes on to write, 'One of my guys from the back seat grabbed the Glock and started busting back.'" Tupac Shakur died later, and his murder would remain unsolved for years. Orlando Anderson the next year.
Well, this has been, for me, kind of a 10-year journey since we put out our doc, Murder Rap, which was the first documentary that put out his taped confession that his crew did this. And my reaction is that this has just been a very long time coming. And very, very, it's just an exciting day to finally have this. We didn't think this was going to happen at a certain point. It just seemed like so much time had gone by. You started to wonder, is it really going to happen or not? But the wheels of justice turn slowly sometimes, and that was the case here. But they got it done.
You said that you thought an indictment would be coming, but now you're saying you didn't think this would ever happen. So did you feel like it was taking too long? Because we had heard some rumblings that a grand jury was looking at this.
I'll just say, initially we had heard that it was going to happen very quickly. It seemed like an indictment was, 6 weeks ago, an indictment was like happening, and then nothing. And we heard the grand jury was convening, and it was very airtight. They're not telling us anything.
What do you think? What kind of witnesses do you think they have? Because everybody else that was in that vehicle that night is.
I know some of the people that they've spoken to, but I can't disclose that. But correct. I mean, all three of the other people that were allegedly with Keefe in the shooter's vehicle, they've all died. This happened. Some of the key witnesses, like Tupac's bodyguard, is dead. Tupac himself, of course, being the closest witness, is dead. Suge Knight, being the next closest witness, will probably never talk about it. So I don't know exactly who they've spoken to that could help them build, a case around Keefe. But I do know that when it came out, we heard from a lot of people that had information on this case that had never disclosed it before, who said that it basically filled in the gaps for them of what they already knew. So my guess is that that's who they've been talking to, is people like that who have pieces of the story. And when you put them all together, it's like this tapestry that comes together of it.
In some of these interviews, Keefe D seemed very cognizant of the fact that he had to be careful about what he said. So he obviously knew that he still was at risk of possibly being prosecuted, but then he goes and writes this book.
Yeah, when he did his interview with BET for Death Row Chronicles, which came out in 2018, he had an attorney with him present for that interview. And then after that, I don't know how much legal counsel he was getting. It's almost like when that came out and nothing happened to him, I wonder if maybe he got lulled into this sense of, oh, I guess they're not going to do anything. I'll just keep doing interviews and I'll be careful on my own and do what I think, I can get away with saying without going too far. But yeah, it seems clear. I mean, the fact that you bring a lawyer with you to an interview to make sure you don't say too much does tell you that he must have, at least in the back of his mind, considered that he might still be able to be prosecuted for this. And the proffer deal, when he did his original, statement to the police about this, 15 years ago, that only covers what he says that day in that meeting. If he went on CNN that night and said the same story, they would be able to use that interview against him.
My name is Kevin McMahill. I'm the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. 27 years. For 27 years, the family of Tupac Shakur has been waiting for justice. We are here today to announce the arrest of 60-year-old Dwayne Keith Davis, a.k.a. Keefe D, for the murder of Tupac Shakur. Davis was arrested this morning by my LVMPD criminal apprehension team, and this investigation started on the night of September 7th, 1996. It is far from over. It has taken countless hours, really decades, of work by the men and women of where we are today. Several of those detectives that are standing here with us include Detective Cliff Mogg, the lead detective on this case. He is now retired. While I know there's been many people who did not believe Tupac Shakur was important to this police department, I'm here to tell you that was simply not the case. It was not the case back then, and it is not the case today. Our goal at LVMPD has always been to hold those accountable and responsible for Tupac's accountable. Just like we do for every victim in our city. Every single victim, every life that is lost is important and remains a priority to this police department. As we methodically built this case to move forward with an arrest, it was also important that at the same time, we're building towards a successful prosecution. We work closely with our esteemed district attorney, Steve Wolfson, in his office to ensure that is going to happen. Mr. Davis's own words reinvigorated our case in 2018. I'm going to give you some of those details, and I'm going to introduce to you our Lieutenant, Jason Johansson, and he will provide you many of the details on how we got here today.
My name is Jason Johansson, and I'm the Homicide Lieutenant with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And my goal here today is to walk you through our investigation and what led us to the indictment of Dwayne Davis, also known as Keefe D, for the of Tupac Shakur. This case has been reviewed by our homicide team and homicide detectives for over 2.5 decades. And ultimately, our persistence in this investigation has paid off. Let me walk you through a timeline of events that as we know them right now. Prior to September 7th of 1996, as we all know, Tupac Shakur was an artist who was signed with Death Row Records. And that Death Row Records and its CEO, Marion Suge Knight, were closely affiliated with the Mob Piru criminal street gangs, and that they had an ongoing feud with the Southside Compton Crips. Dwayne Davis was the leader and shot caller of the Southside Compton Crips. And both of these gangs operated out of the Southern California area of Compton. On the night of September 7th of 1996, Tupac Shakur, along with Suge Knight, and members of their entourage, which include members of Mob Piru, came to Vegas to attend the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Members of the Southside Compton Crips, which included Dwayne Davis, along with his nephew Orlando Anderson, were also in attendance at the same event. As both were leaving the fight, members of Death Row Records spotted Orlando Anderson near an elevator bank inside the MGM, and at that time they began to kick and punch him near that elevator bank. I will now show you hotel security footage, as many of you have already seen, related to this incident. And on this incident, you will see Tupac Shakur, who's wearing a shiny satiny shirt, along with Marion Suge Knight, who's Orlando Anderson. Following this incident, you'll see hotel security intervene, and then they will leave the area of the fight. Little did anyone know that it is this incident right here that would ultimately lead to Tupac Shakur. Following this incident, Tupac and Suge Knight both left the MGM to make their way to a post-fight party, which was to occur at a local nightclub. At the same time, word had spread amongst members of the Southside Compton Crips of what had occurred inside the MGM, and then that's when Dwayne Davis began to devise a plan to obtain a firearm and retaliate against Suge Knight and Mr. Shakur for what occurred inside the hotel against Mr. Anderson. After Davis obtained a gun, he entered into a white Cadillac along with Terrence Brown, DeAndre Smith, and Orlando Anderson. Based on our investigation, this is where we know they were seated. At some point in time, as they were in the white Cadillac, Mr. Davis took the gun he had obtained and provided it to the passengers in the rear seat of the vehicle. As they were driving west on Flamingo Road near Koval, they had located the black BMW, which was driven by Suge Knight, and in the passenger seat was Tupac Shakur. And as they turned around, they pulled up near the passenger side of that vehicle and immediately began at Mr. Knight and Mr. Shakur. Following that shooting, the white Cadillac fled the area southbound on Koval, and after our officers arrived on scene, Tupac was later transported to the University Medical Center, where he was treated medically approximately 6 days later on September 13th. Within the first few months of the investigation, our detectives knew most of the information I just briefed you on. However, we never had the necessary evidence to bring this case forward and present it for criminal charges. As time went on, this case had been reviewed multiple times by different investigators assigned to my section, but it wasn't until 2018 that this case was reinvigorated as additional information came to light related to this, specifically Dwayne Davis's own admissions to his involvement in this homicide investigation that he provided to numerous different media outlets. In our section, we knew at this time that this was likely our last time to take a run at this case to successfully solve this case and bring forth a criminal charge. It was at that time that this case was assigned to Cliff Mogg, a detective within my homicide section. And over the last 5 years, my section worked closely, hand in hand with the Clark County District Attorney's Office and followed a systematic investigative plan over the last 5 years. We've conducted countless interviews and corroborated numerous facts that were not only consistent with the crime scene on the night of the incident, but also corroborated and were consistent with the sequence of events that night. This ultimately led to us procuring a search warrant which was executed at Mr. Davis's residence in Henderson, Nevada. And following the execution of that search warrant, in close coordination with the District Attorney's Office, this case was presented to the grand jury, which ultimately led to Davis being indicted on charges of.
Good afternoon. I am the Las Vegas, Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson. It has often been said, justice delayed is justice denied. It's a quote we hear often and for many, many years when talking about our legal system, but not in this case. Today, justice will be served in the murder of Tupac Shakur. A Clark County grand jury has indicted Dwayne Keith Davis with 1 count of use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. Davis will appear in court in the next few days or so for a hearing to determine his custody status and to set a jury trial date. This grand jury has been receiving evidence for months and has determined there is sufficient evidence to justify the filing of this criminal indictment. I know a lot of people have been watching and waiting for this day. Tupac Shakur is a music legend, and for a long time, this community and worldwide have been wanting justice for Tupac. Today, we are taking that first step. Tupac was actually quoted as saying, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside while still alive. Never surrender." Well, we didn't surrender thanks to the great work of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department under the leadership of Sheriff Kevin McMahill, Lieutenant Johansson, retired Detective Cliff Mogg. I am proud to announce the return of this document. This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for. It spells out the facts and circumstances and what justifies a Clark County grand jury in returning an indictment. Justice will be served.
Whoa, that's right. They couldn't give much details, but the prosecutor, Steve Wolfson, said all the evidence will come out during the trial. Shoot, if there gets to be one, because I don't see going to trial at all with the mountain of evidence against him. He will more than likely take a plea deal. That's just my opinion. I'm just glad they finally caught him, and now he could brag about it behind bars for the rest of his life. He's 60 years old, so I'm sure he will live out the rest of his life behind bars. Y'all already know it's that time, and I want to know y'all thoughts on this. Drop down in the comment box. Let's have the conversation. With that said, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you already have it. And smash that notification bell so you'll see when I drop my next video. Stay blessed. Peace.